Hello, we are live here. Welcome to Cannabis Marketing Live. I'm your host, Kendra Losee, where we are all puff, no fluff. Our guest today is Courtney Freeman. Courtney is an amazing person, as well as product marketer, event marketer, and has a really varied background. So I wanted to bring her in to talk about event marketing and her experience there. Welcome, Courtney.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you for that kind introduction.
Absolutely.
I trust you in person.
I met Courtney originally at the Women Empowerment Cannabis Summit, and it was just, it's such an amazing event. And it's definitely an event where the event itself has become almost larger than the organization, because I think it grew so much more than what was expected. And I know that Courtney was a big part of that, as well as the rest of the team, and Simone, of course, absolutely Simone. But
yeah, thank you, Simone, for bringing us together.
Absolutely,
for that faith.
Absolutely. So Courtney's background is she is the CEO of White Buffalo. It's a 40-year-old rolling paper company, and with a new massage primer and more products on the way. White Buffalo is expanding marketing share in cannabis, hemp, and accessory markets with e-commerce site whitebuffalospirit.org. We've got a lot going on there, Courtney. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yes. So let's see, a little bit of background. I have approximately 15 years of marketing experience. And I started out, I did a little bit of work before university, but after university, I worked on Wall Street. And my role was institutional sales, but in working with brokers, I positioned them in the market. So I helped them to do do email blasts, for example, the coding behind for deliverability and HTML, and then also to put together their websites and the marketing behind that. And this was back in 2002. So that was kind of like a newer technology. And for brokers who are not in the technology space, that was something I think, that they needed support on. So my position there was, a little bit more beyond just institutional sales, but it was a very nice kind of foothold for me in what was my future trajectory, which is a lot of marketing, a lot of product marketing, and product technology, product management, product development. So I think because of the subject of this particular episode, it's worth noting that after working on Wall Street, I felt that I should follow my passion. And people that I worked with on the street, they woke up every day thinking about, where the market was. And I didn't wake up thinking, where's the market today? So I said, well, maybe there's something out there for me where I wake up thinking about that. And film had been always a passion of mine. I produced student films at Columbia. We did not have an undergraduate program, so we created a club, and I was one of the members of the club and also produced these films. So I said, well, I'm passionate about that. So I went into film production, and as a part of that, was also producing major events. So Tribeca Film Festival, MTV Music Awards, for example. And then fast forward, moved out to LA from New York, and I was managing a website called Go Banking Rates. It's a nationally syndicated personal finance content site. And I was in charge of generating revenue, user experience. I worked with the development team. And so a big part of that is marketing. You're marketing content, monthly content promotions for contests, video submissions, things like that. And then also managing the ad revenue for the site, which was at the time digital banking, which is kind of was a new offering at that time. So here we are, and I'm working in the cannabis industry, and events are providing me with a great channel to position myself in the industry, to provide utility to my fellow industry members, and then also to create an experience, which is something I really enjoy, and provide some greater value for my products and getting them out to market, but also for other people's products that they're bringing to market.
That is awesome and impressive. See, I told you guys when I said that Courtney has an impressive background, I was not lying. There's just something about somebody starting with at Columbia. Boom. And then going from there. It's such an interesting trajectory too, in terms of the path that a lot of people have taken to get into this industry, right? There's by far the props go to the people that have been in the industry for a long time and kind of slogging it out to try and get us to where we are. But when you start to look at also the people that are coming in, where people have come from and what their backgrounds are and all those skill sets people bring. Because I know I personally don't know anyone who's worked on events at the level of the MTV Music Awards. But when you can start to drill that down and understand what's important and what's valuable, that information and that creating that experience, to your point, becomes so critical. I just want to make a note before I start diving into the questions and the takeaways that if you're watching the replay, welcome. If you can let us know where you're watching from, where you're viewing from, we'll be sure to respond if you have any questions. Just let us know. Love to see you guys here. Absolutely.
Real time.
I know.
I just want to note that that's one of the things that I provide coaching services for is transitioning into the industry, because I also see that there's some real value there, because we do have a lot of people bringing diverse backgrounds and experiences and skill sets. And if we can kind of funnel that in the right way, welcome them, we'll have a more robust industry for tomorrow. So I like that capacity. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's fascinating. It is absolutely fascinating. Okay. Let's talk about events. All right. So first of all, I broke it into 3 sections. So the planning, the promotion, and then like the legal regulations, what's changing, what do you see coming? So when we talk about the event planning and creating that experience to put on an amazing event that sells out, what trends do you see or have you been seeing in the cannabis space?
Sure. So for me, I'm coming from like a little bit of an analytical standpoint. I'm looking at what other people are doing and what's working for them. Also, what's in alignment with what I want to bring to the experience. So for me, I'm really focused on community building, education, incorporating mindful consumption. And so that's kind of my vibe. But oftentimes, I'll look around and see that maybe someone has on their event invitation a video of women smoking blunts, and that's the whole video. So then I think to myself, well, what's going to be the audience draw there? Because that's not the way I would position myself. I totally respect it. It's just not how I position myself. So then I want to know, well, are they drawing a lot of people with that, emphasis? Because it's bold, in a world where we, formerly couldn't even be public, and now to have a video online promoting an event where everyone's smoking, I think it's a very direct message. Like this is what's going to happen here. I do think, yes, absolutely, people are hungry for consumption at events, and it's something that we're kind of still opening up because we're identifying the legal way to do it and a way that's also the best experience. For example, if you're going to have an indoor event with consumption and smoking, you're going to need some ventilation. Ideally, we have, a beautiful venue with an outdoor space, something along those lines. But in terms of really drawing an audience, I think it's about, honing on your best marketing channels, what works for you, and then again, the audience that I think will respond to the vibe that you're creating.
Absolutely. Okay, I want to break that down a little bit because I don't want to jump into promotions yet. So like when you're putting the event experience together, you mentioned a couple things there, right? So one was knowing your audience. So if you have a event and you're promoting it with a video with someone smoking a joint, it's going to be a different audience than say a health and wellness type of event, typically, not always.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So how to hone in on your audience and appeal to them for sure.
Exactly. And then, so it's once again, and we've said this a bunch of times throughout these episodes, is knowing your audience and who you're trying to reach. But, so once you know your audience, right, how do you make your event stand out? There's so many cannabis events going on. How do you make yours the one that people want to go to?
Yes. Okay, so for me, I think there's a lot of power behind your intention. So why are you doing this? And for me, a big part of why I create events is through providing value to an So, for example, I have an event coming up, and Max Michalonis is coming down from Sacramento. We're going to give an update on what's happening with the regulations, a breakdown of what happened with the last legislation, and then we have something else, another panel that's going to hone in on one component of that. So I've got an opportunity for all the industry players to learn about what's going on in Sacramento, right? So I'm bringing the government to town, and then before the event, to kind of draw attention to the value that I'm providing, I have my podcast where I can interview participants, and then marketing is really important. So email blasts are a big part of what I'm doing. I'm segmenting and really targeting specific individuals within the email list, my contact list, and then graphics. If you can incorporate GIFs and things like that. I think I just watched one of your other episodes in my marathon of Mota marketing, and
Thank you.
really, yeah, one of them was focused on Instagram, and Instagram has a new feature where you can swipe up, and with the swipe up, you can go to an event page and purchase a ticket. So I think that's a great integration where you have something new and flash and fresh, that people are going to kind of go on to. Other ways, cross promotion. So, for example, with Max, he's our star speaker. So I gave him 5 tickets to bring guests. And then, I have sponsors, which I think you might want to talk about later, but with the sponsors, I'll give them, in some instances, a discount code to share with their network, because it brings value, yes, to my event, because potentially there's ticket purchasers. But for the sponsor, there's an additional value where they have an exclusive offer that they're providing to their audience that also gives their audience value. So their value, the value being the education, the knowledge that helps you to have a more successful business, for example. So I think that's very compelling. And then I also, for each of the events, I do a pre, during, and post marketing. So during the event, I might do some video content that I'm sharing online, for example. So I think, in the instance of like Mota marketing, for example, with your show, for those individuals who are watching, they might be interested in being on the show later, right? Because they've seen it before. So now in the future, it's kind of laying down the tracks for that greater engagement later. So I think that's a component of standing out. And then I try to kind of incorporate, if I'm doing, like I have an event I'm doing tomorrow, impromptu Burning Man without tickets event. At that event, I'll put out some flyers, and so that while I'm there, I can talk to people about the events that are upcoming, and that's a personal engagement. So that sometimes the one-on-one, it can be even more valuable, the personal invitation. So I try to throw those out. One of the things I think is worth noting is that it's very difficult to get the dispensaries to come out. Dispensary operators are quite busy, and they're working long hours, often on the weekends. So, and they hold the purse string, so people are coming to them. So sometimes I'll go to the dispensary and do a personal invitation and try to get them to come and engage with our audience, because they're an important part of the supply chain. If we can keep everybody interacting, there's a greater possibility of fostering those connections in the future. So that's a few more ways that you can kind of stand out and engage, which is important, right? To engage and provide value.
Absolutely. And you just put so much information in that one section. That was awesome. So to recap, there were ideas and suggestions on how to promote and how to add value. And that was something that you said in there that I think was really important, because you want to add, if you're going to look at sponsors, you want to make sure that let me actually ask you, how do you pick your sponsors? How do you recommend someone looks at their sponsors? Sure.
So, for me, I guess I want to come from a place of integrity, and when you're creating an event, the sponsors are a big component of that. So I'm looking for individuals or companies that are in alignment with my ethos and the experience I want to provide to guests. But also, is there value for the sponsor? So, if I know that we're doing a theme or a topic that very much ties in with a product or service offering, then it's okay, this would be a great individual or company to be a part of this event. And if they see the alignment, then we'll move forward. Sometimes I'll even create something very custom for them to, I guess, it's a little bit more fun or more meeting their KPIs, but typically it's about, if it's a good fit. That's not to say that, people don't reach out to me, as they do, and then I can see that there's a good value there. But ideally, if I'm prospecting, I'm looking for companies that I think are a good alignment. Sometimes it's also about future events, for example, I'd like to do an event where we focus on vaporizer technology, combustion levels, temperature gauges, what the technology is, ceramic. There's so much going on with vapor technology, and I haven't really seen an event surrounding that. So that's something I've been looking at. And so in preparing for that moment, I'm reaching out to vaporizer companies as an opportunity for them to sponsor different events so that I can later circle back with them and say, this is now the moment where we can really shine a light on your service in conjunction with this vertical.
That's awesome. Okay, so once again, I want to break that down a little bit. So basically, your advice, so that's how you approach it, and I think that's really smart because you really want to partner with companies that are going to represent you as well, because when they're there and you're the one hosting this event, it is a reflection on you. So you want to make sure that you have that alignment, like Courtney said. Just a side note, Tony's watching and just said hi. Our friend Tony Forge.
Hi, Tony.
But I think it's really, really important, and I want to make sure that, so it's alignment, but also, to your point, it's on the topic of what you're looking at that's appropriate for the event, but also the right target audience too. So I think that making sure that, like you said, those ethos and goals align too with what you're looking for. So along the idea of the event experience, right? So you have your sponsors, you found a location. What types of, we're going to skip around a little bit. What types of rules and regulations do you have to take into account when it comes to regulations and picking your event location? Are there any special licenses you need? Let's break that down a little bit. And I know for the record, we're talking about California only right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't know. I'm not well versed in other states. And as of right now, in California, things are so up in the air that it's kind of consuming all of us more so than having time to say, okay, what if I want to do something in Nevada? I do work I have event partners that I work with in other states. They're versed in what those laws are, so I don't have to worry about that. But I do stay abreast of what's happening in California because it's important for all of us to be aware, but B, because I want to help shape policy, and I can't do that if I don't know what's going on. So I try to keep my ear to the ground. One of the things that's facing us right now is we have regulations in place as of this year. So there's a new event permit and license possibility. And with that, becomes, there's more responsibility. The ultimate goal is to be able, if you do go for this event license, the ultimate goal is to be able to conduct events with consumption and sales legally. So for the cannabis, the cannabis industry, you're looking at products, it's consumer packaging goods typically, and interaction with a human user. So you want to have a taste, a smell, you want to have all these different experiences, and that's something that will further sales. So we're all kind of working around that right now with a lot of events and not being able to necessarily conduct sales in conjunction with the experience. So ultimately, the event permit and license would allow for on-site consumption and sales. As of right now, the way that the regulations are structured, only the DAA fairgrounds permit this. And here's a big catch-22. When this was announced, it was identified once event producers tried to go and create these events, the DAA fairgrounds did not know that they were the legal territory for this type of event. Then then came another hurdle where we started reaching out to these DAA fairgrounds and saying, hey, I'm so-and-so, we'd like to host an event here. And they would say, and then they would, potentially vote and have a ban. They don't want cannabis events necessarily. So, they don't even know what a cannabis event looks like. There's a lot of questions around that, and how does it affect the community, So we're in these early baby step stage, so there's still, a lot of up in the air. But, there's been a few instances where I think it was Chalice that was supposed to happen and didn't because things didn't go as planned. I think the High Times, I believe, had a cannabis cup set up. That didn't go through because they couldn't get a license in time. So there's been some hiccups for some of these events that the High Times is grossing millions off their events. It's a whole nother, I think they got purchased based on the revenue that's generated from their event production. And, so right now we don't have that avenue. There are events happening that do have access, but, they're few and far between at this point. And I would even say that the number of event licenses that have been received applications have been somewhat limited. The other issues are the actual distribution. So if you did have an event with sales, you need the product to be transported through a licensed distributor. And then there's a bigger issue of the farmers. So, we're all here doing this cultivation, bringing product to market. It's the farmers that we want to highlight. Know your grower. Know where your cannabis comes from. And then they are kind of eliminated from the farmers market. There's no farmers market because they have to have either a micro business with transport and distribution, or they need to be part of the distributor. But ideally, we would have events like Emerald Exchange where the farmers come down and they interact directly with people who are the consumer, and we create bigger community and we talk about how the plant is grown and what kind of earth it's grown in and the practices and, are we honoring lunar cycles and things like this. There's this other kind of component that we're missing. So there is legislation that's happening right now. We are trying to move towards a space where, we won't be restricted to DAA fairgrounds. And then potentially farmers will be able to come to market with their product with I think maybe a limited permit. So it would be a one-day event, for example. There's also restrictions on the amount of time for the events. So if we want to have a Burning Man integration here in California and do a week or a month of activation, that's not available to us currently. So that would be, you'd be looking probably to do something more like a bud and breakfast, but an institution that has hospitality so that you could have consumption in conjunction with sales longer term. But these are some of the critical issues that we're facing.
And it's so crazy when you look at events, right, and the limitations around them, because to your point, part of the larger event experience is the smell, taste, right? Like it's never just one sense. And if you want to see something, you can do that online, right? Or in a store, but actually to be able to go and be surrounded by it and the energy of an event. But part of it is bringing in the smells and the touch and being able to actually use your other senses and to be blocked on some of those things to actually be able to, go home with what you saw is crazy.
I agree. Well, there's also a few other points here. So, to bring things a little bit more of an international scope, Canada will have adult use access to product as of October. They will not have edibles available, okay, but they will have other types of products. And the marketing is very limited. There's a huge warning, and they are not able to smell or touch the product. So in their regulatory offering, they have restricted that sensory experience, unfortunately. Also, it's worth noting that, for those individuals who are timid about hosting a cannabis event in their location, cannabis events are docile. There's no arguments or fights. Everybody's getting along, connecting, talking about this great new world that we live in where we can consume cannabis and share it, So it is a very welcoming, open, friendly space. It's very, I can't say it never happens, but, I haven't been to a cannabis event where there's been, anything like that. And that typically, it's, there's going to be more rowdy alcohol-based events that you would have issues with security and things like that. But, obviously it's not, I can't say they're all like that. But typically if you're having a cannabis event, it's a lovely, warming affair.
And what I've noticed as well at consumption events is that people are just so happy to have a place where they can smoke with their friends and not be in someone's backyard or, wherever, someone's house. Like, that it is a whole other level of, like, happy, positive energy on top of that.
Yeah. Well, you raise a good point. Well, you've got the anandamide, you're like tapping into that bliss molecule with the cannabis consumption, but you're also creating a kind of a frequency, a vibration in the atmosphere where people are kind of, and there's definitely in cannabis a community building component where you want to share and communicate and make friends with people. It's definitely something that's a diplomacy builder. It's why the Native Americans, would gather around a peace pipe, for example.
Right.
This is something that's, reminding us that we're all children of the earth.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. So I want to just keep moving through some of the takeaways to make sure people are getting some of the information. We have Chelsea and Mika here as well. Welcome, you guys. Excited to see everyone here joining us today. If you have any questions, shout them out. Love to get your questions answered by Chelsea while she's here. Sorry, there's Chelsea watching. Courtney is... Courtney's on camera, Chelsea's watching. Got it.
It's Steve. You got camera, Chelsea, Courtney. Someone called me Candace 2 hours ago, so don't worry.
I get Kimberly a lot. If people don't know my name, I get Kimberly or Heather. One time at Starbucks, I got Sunshine. I was like, really?
I think that's because the Playmates. Hughes ladies.
Yeah, exactly. They're just going to work them through.
I don't know.
Thanks. That's what I want. So when we look at cannabis events, what are the top 3 things you recommend to someone who's looking at starting their own cannabis event, who wants to host an event? What's like the 3 main things? You talked about audience, you talked about goals. Let's take it a step deeper in that.
What's the perspective? Is this for them to host a great event, or what's the objective?
Yeah, to host a great event that might be the first in a couple, right?
Okay, so earlier you mentioned, what are the trends? And I just thought to myself, there's something that's really there's a real tie-in between music and cannabis. Mm-hmm. It opens up your sensory, audio experience where you're really like hearing the different instruments maybe, or you just feel more passionate about it. Just, it's opened up your heart chakra and you're like, oh, I love this music. So I feel like music is an important integration with any event. Right. But with cannabis in particular, I think that having music is a really good idea. Also, it's not just about the cannabis, right? So, having the music and entertainment is a nice component. For me, I'm just like Hannah nerd. So for me, I like to incorporate what I'm learning into the event. So, I'll do like terpene enhanced waters where I'm just doing infusions, and then people have something to drink, which brings me to the third major thing, beverages. All right. There is science behind this. If you have cotton mouth, which is a typical side effect, or not typical, but it is a side effect at times of consumption of cannabis, whether you're consuming it edibly or smoking or what have you, oils, whatever the case may be, you can have a cotton mouth. Mm-hmm. Lemonade with cotton mouth. So, a beverage. I've noticed that a lot of cannabis consumption events don't have anything to drink. And immediately I'm thinking to myself, it'd be great if you just have water or a lemon water or anything.
I think,
beverages are a great idea. A lot of people are kind of getting a little bit, elevated, and mocktails. So maybe you have some like Blessed Booch kombucha is delicious. I brought that into our last US event. We had a networking mixer, and we put CBD drops in it, so it becomes a mocktail. It's healthy. You've got enzymes. There's all these different things happening that are a complement to the experience. So a beverage, I think, is a really nice, almost required component.
Absolutely. That is awesome. And totally, the basic stuff, right? It goes back to your senses and just taking care of yourself and creating that right experience that you want people to have. Mika actually has a great question for us. She's asking if there's any tips for cannabis book meetups and specifically venues.
What's a cannabis book meetup?
I'm assuming it's a cannabis book club.
It sounds like a book club with cannabis.
That's what I'm picturing as well. Mika, if you can correct us in the meantime, answer that question. And then if it's not right, we'll redirect it.
Well, so I guess, maybe she's picking up on my canon nerd comment. I think that is, an interesting conversation. I mean, I guess it depends on your audience too. Not everybody can consume cannabis and have an intellectual conversation about what's happening in the book and their memories of reading about it last week. But if you were, it would be good to do like a fantasy book, I think, because, cannabis opens up your right brain thinking. There's a lot of creativity that comes into the works. So if you were going to be doing a book club, I would advise that you do it somewhere where you have a very cozy atmosphere and you can potentially get creative and kind of branch out. So maybe you create your own stories together as a function of the book club. That would be cool. You have a book club book.
Do you have any recommendations for like types of venues? Let's assume she's in California, for types of venues to hold something like that. And obviously like it varies with the number of people, but I'm just going to assume it's like 15 people, maybe more. Talking about a book, you probably can't get more than that unless you break people into groups. Any suggestions there?
I would, if it were me, I would do it. If it were a book club, I would just go to different people's homes. That would be my goal. But, if we're going to talk about regulations here in Santa Monica, where if you have a rental property, you're not allowed to consume cigarettes. And that means you can't smoke joints either on the property. Some people have their leases are built out that say no edibles, no cannabis at all. So, that's something to be aware of. If you are a cannabis consumer, don't rent from people who don't support your life choices and our movement for healthy lifestyles. So I would say like a home would be really cool, just switching around, going to different people's homes, and then everybody at each of the homes can offer up a different product to share. So that at each book iteration, you're experiencing something new, and then you can talk about it and have discussion. That's what I would do. But on the topic of venues, that's a difficult challenge sometimes.
Well, she just added more to it as well because she's actually starting a cannabis book club community, which I think sounds awesome because I'm a total book nerd.
Yes.
As like behind me. But she's also in Texas, which is an illegal state. So I would say private homes.
Yeah, so the private homes would be good. And then, try to bring in a refreshment. And I would even say like, the Cannabis Pharmacy is a fantastic book about cannabis medicine. I'd recommend that to you.
Absolutely. And that one's a good one. Breaking the Glass Ceiling's good.
Yeah.
I think that when you start looking at that, like I've had a group of friends that, it's not a community. We do it just ourselves, but we started out playing Bunko, which I think we played for like the first year maybe and then stopped, but there's 12 of us. We rotate houses. So each month someone hosts, you bring a bottle of wine and then the host gets left with whatever bottle is left if there's not all consumed. Like you could totally play with those types of things. And this has been going on with my friends for over 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah, exactly.
There's easy things to really build those bonds and create what you're looking for, I think, by kind of flipping it and looking at it a little bit differently, especially in an illegal state.
All right, hold on. The Cannabis Manifesto by Steve D'Angelo, also Dr. Bonnie Goldstein's book.
Yes, we'll just make a list. We'll make a list of book resources. I'll start.
Invite us to your book club.
Exactly. Is it virtual? Is it online? Can we do that as well?
Well, that's an idea. It could be an online like group chat Google Hangout.
Perfect.
That could be your venue.
All right, Mika, we've got your business plan. And I know Chelsea's here watching, and she hosted a cannabis trivia night at a local brewery a couple weeks ago, which I was bummed to miss, but that was really fun. And she did a great job promoting that as well, because it really depends on what kind of experience you want people to have, right? Do you want it fun and relaxed and casual, or do you want somebody to learn and take away information and to grow? Like, it really just depends, I think, on what your outcomes are.
Cannabis trivia. What a great idea. I might steal that.
I think she's still watching. Chelsea's awesome. She's actually, that's why I was mixing up your names, is because she's actually on next week, because she's really solid at inbound marketing. And so when I was putting all the promotional stuff together, I kept mixing them up. So I had to like stop and separate and do one, walk away, then do the other one. But yeah, she did a good job with it. Oh, Mika also has a Facebook group. Mika, if you are open to sharing that, feel free to put the link to your Facebook group in the comments. And we'll just put a master list together for people at the end. Okay, so Chelsea, event marketing. Let's talk.
Courtney.
So, damn it, I did it again. God. Courtney, I really like you, Courtney. You're awesome. Chelsea, get out of my head.
Get out of here, cat, Chelsea.
Chelsea's here. She's talking about how she's going to see us we're going to an event tonight, and she's doing some trivia questions for that too. Okay, this isn't about you, Chelsea. You're on next week.
I'm gonna be on her show next week. It'll be cool.
Feel free, come on in. It'll be great. Okay, so we've talked about event promotions. We talked about creating that event experience. So I want to talk a little bit about, and this is something I hear often. I know, Tony, I've got to get my guest name right. Courtney's right in front of me. I can see her. And I got it right that time. So let's talk about event giveaways, because there's regulations in California around giving away cannabis. What are the best giveaways that you've seen in an event, and at any event, and then at cannabis events?
Well, let's see. There is some legal nuance there that we can talk about. It's worth a consideration. I'll start by answering your question. I do a monthly industry event called Conscious Cannabis. And at the last one, we had Seeker Solution. He was featured in MG Magazine, which is a great feature. And they gave away a $14,000 workshop package for business leaders. So that really blew my mind.
Okay.
That was substantial. I mean, the value, and then there was a breakout call that leads into that. It was an 8-week course, and they have focused on operations, HR, all sorts of stuff. So in the course, you're getting a few different topics. So that to me was pretty profound. Let's see. I got this, I think it's called the Ego Pro Vaporizer it's really beautiful. That's a really nice device. So that's something like, that, if you can get a nice device in a gift bag, that's a bonus. Simple things like, Aloha Humboldt has this bubblegum strain that is really great. And that makes a party too. Like, if you're incorporating products that can make the party, that's really great. So it doesn't have to be super high expensive. It can be creative. Crave skincare. I got in a gift bag some, they do a natural mica shimmer gloss. So glitter is made from plastic. I don't know if you're aware of this, but it was a surprise to me. I didn't think about it. I'm super eco-conscious, but it pollutes the environment. So, using BioGlitz or something that's mica-based, like this gloss, is really cool. So I was excited about that.
That's cool.
I thought that was pretty neat. And, for me, again, the eco-conscious thing, if I'm doing any kind of swag, I really want it to be mindful of its impact. So, not a lot of plastic, something that can be reused, something that brings value to your life. It's creative and inspiring, just as pointers on what you might want to do. And then from a marketing standpoint, something that people will use and they'll think of you, right? Because you want them to think about either your product or service again. So if it's something that they are, for example, fans. I've seen a couple of fans at events, and I'll pick one up and I'm like, what a great idea. Great.
That is a good idea.
User engagement. I mean, for California, because it's hot here, right? It'll be hot maybe in your place where it's summer, but here it's hot a lot. So, and it's getting hotter. So fans, and you're looking, the fans fanning you and people are looking at it, and you're actually physically engaging with the product in a way that you wouldn't necessarily for the product line. Like Papa and Barkley, for example, is what I'm thinking of. They're doing topicals. So that's like different than the fan, but you're using it, you're feeling good, you're enjoying the experience, and so it gives you a nice connotation. And I think that's like in terms of just throwing events, that like we, at our Conscious Cannabis event, we have raffle prizes because it's fun for the audience members, but for audience engagement too, as a event sponsor, being associated with a prize and something that brings people joy or value, I think is pretty strong.
I have a client that does just local happy hours, and they literally run to like Big Five sports and just grab stuff. And granted, it's not like, it depends on the time of the year, the type of basketballs or footballs or whatever. But people go crazy for those like $4 footballs or whatever it is. I've never seen anything like it. Okay.
He's a Big Five.
Like, it's crazy. It doesn't. I guess my point is that it doesn't require a lot of money in order to do something that can generate excitement.
Yeah, exactly.
Chelsea, the real Chelsea, not the Courtney Chelsea. Chelsea has a whole list of questions here for you.
Oh, okay.
Are you ready? You ready? We're going to take them one by one. I put them on the screen too. All right. How do you determine sponsorship prices?
Based on the value of the event. So, if there's going to be if it's going to be a consumption event and the sponsors want audience engagement, and they want exposure, then, you probably want to base it on how much exposure they're going to have. Whereas with one of my, learning and networking series, it's an engagement with owners and operators. So it's very targeted to business owners who have a service that business owners can take advantage of. And that's a unique offering. So if you have a unique influencer audience or something along those lines, that affects the pricing. Also the threshold, if we have an event where we've got, 30 sponsors that are all like startup businesses, right? Because in the cannabis industry, there's not a lot of companies that are big players that have been around for a long time who have fits like that, right? And we can't start a business in our kitchen anymore, really. So, there's a big, buy-in with the licensing. So,
oh my God, yeah.
In that instance, that you want to have a more of an experience for the people that are attending the event. So you'd have a lower sponsorship price, and then try to balance also with ticketing. So what's your KPI? Are you doing this to make money, or are you doing this to bring value? Those are considerations, because if you just want to have a free party for influencers, in that instance, the sponsor contribution could pay for the party, and you wouldn't necessarily need to charge people. Also, you might have an instance where the influencers can all bring a friend. Then you have a huddle of people that you really want to bring the vibe, and then maybe there's a lower ticket price for additional invites along that line. So if you're structuring it, you would structure it based on your intention, KPIs, and then your business objectives.
Okay, hopefully that answered your question. You also hit her, do you make any profit off the events? Because I think that depends on what your purpose is, like you just said. She has another question here about, do you find free events perform better than selling tickets?
From an event marketing standpoint, having some value tied to your tickets is going to give you a greater possibility that people will actually show up. Yep. So even if you wanted to provide a free event, sometimes just charging $5 just means that you'll have more people at the event. Right. Something to consider. For if it's a last minute event, for example, maybe you want people to be there, and so there's no advantage to charging them an advance ticket because there's only a few days before the event, and you're not really locking them in. And that's another consideration, that if you are having an event, you want to know how many people are coming. So doing an advance ticket price that's lower gives them an incentive to sign up sooner, so that you know how many people are coming.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting because the events I've done in San Diego, people are notorious for showing up at the last minute and not buying their tickets till like the day of or the day before. So even with advanced ticket pricing, people here tend to just not plan ahead, I guess.
LA that's typical LA to last minute. We're all just trying to accomplish so much here,
right.
And it's hard to fit it all in. Oftentimes we overcommit. So I think, you raised a good point. What's your market? What's typical to the market?
And there's times also with the free event, I know for me, and like I will literally look at the traffic and be like, even if it was a $35 event, do I want to sit in traffic for an hour? Or like, where am I at? Like, who am I going to see there? Who's going to be there? So there is some element of charging a little bit just to make sure people show, and then you can get a little more out of them too. By, you can do prizes and stuff like that to make the experience a little more rounded and exciting. She has one more question, then Tony has a question as well. So Chelsea's last question for Courtney is, what's your process for organizing an event?
Let's see. So I guess it depends on the event, but typically I'm doing a lot of events. So I don't have a lot of lead time. They're usually smaller, more intimate events. I'm not doing huge conferences typically. The C-West event, the summit in January is a larger event, but usually they're smaller events, so it's not a lot of lead time. And typically I'm framing around, a guest speaker, for example. So for my next Conscious Cannabis event, that's on the 18th, I started about a month ago. I locked in Max because he was coming down from Sacramento, so I had to know when he would be available to put the event around him. And then once I locked him in, I then looked at other speakers, and then I looked at the topic. And so as of just this last few days, I've identified another panel that I can break out for Native American cannabis and to look at that, because this is also under the umbrella of legislative updates, bills that are coming through or didn't pass, preparing for the future. So now I'm going to be doing we have a first panel and a second panel, so now I'm going to do a whole other layer of marketing around this.
Right.
So that's a part of it. And I have a set venue. So for this particular event, it's a monthly series at the same location, Solidarity, here in Santa Monica. So that's one element. Like, the venue is really tough for most events. Sometimes you almost build the event around the venue. Specific to cannabis, not necessarily other types of events, but also, the event venue, you want to match the experience. So maybe it has some components like I talked about earlier, air ventilation, rooftop that's open, so things like that. And then also, what needs to happen at the event. So if it is experiential, candles, things like that. Is there a motif? What is the beverage? If it's a cuisine event, like I'm going to be at Moonlit Movable Feast this month as well, and that's a whole other type of experience. It incorporates cuisine, but there's also people who come in and educate and talk about what's happening with this over here, and maybe they're blowing glass, and there's a whole other experiential component. So that might take a little bit more planning, preparing the space, timing, things like that, and then just logistics. So with marketing, with any kind of marketing today, the technology, it's which software are you using, getting the software set up, that's a whole nother world, right? And then how do you tie that into your logistics? So for example, if, you don't want to bottleneck at the door when people are registering. So are you scanning tickets, or do you have a list? Do you pre-print their name tags for like a conference where they can just come in and pick it up and go? So these are all kind of things that have to go into planning.
Absolutely. And there's so many logistics that go into event planning that I personally have so much admiration for people who do it.
It is. It really is, but it's fun. I mean, it's one of the things where there's so many moving pieces. For someone like me that's a program manager who can kind of, have all these different, things going on at once and be putting the pieces together, it's not a lot of work. It's more, I'm working, in a capacity, but it's really more about creating. I like to say creating as opposed to working, because it's a whole other, experience, right? Like, how am I looking at this activity that I'm doing? I'm creating. I'm interacting with people that I want to interact with, and we're gonna have this beautiful end result that I can look at and be like, oh yes, it's all worth it.
So I was just going to say, the one thing that I love about events is that you can actually see it, right? Like it happens. And you have clear understanding of people attending or the success level and the KPIs and how well you did according to what your projections are and your goals. Like sometimes I feel with some of the other stuff in marketing, it's like, okay, it's just ongoing. You're slogging through it sometimes to get there. There's not always that clean, like campaign, right? I may or may not be thinking specifically of social media.
Yeah. Well, event, like anything that's, project management, there's some research behind it that we will achieve a certain high from completing a project. Yeah. And so if there's an instance where you don't have that gratification of the completion, it's kind of like, you don't exactly. Get like the real gratification. So having some physical, tangible something that at the end, with social media marketing, it's your data, right? You're looking at your data analytics and you're saying, okay, I had these many eyeballs on my page or what have you. But you raise a good point too, that with event production, I think there's a lot of consideration around how you are measuring performance, because sometimes that can actually be difficult. And there are some technology solutions that will allow one to better measure, because it's not just about necessarily attendance.
Right. No, and it's true, because I've seen some of the events that drive the best results might only have 10 people at them, right? You're expecting 25 or 50 and you have 10 or 15, but the people who are there are the ones that end up being almost more valuable than the sheer numbers. And I feel that way about social media. I feel that way about a lot of things, right? Like it's quality over quantity a lot of times. And I think that's really important, especially to understand how you're measuring the success of your event. I want to jump to Tony's question. So Tony, and you touched on this a little bit, so I think she's asking for a little more to expand. So who are the best people to approach for sponsorships? So not just, you mentioned the businesses, so let's talk about that a little bit more, but also who at the businesses, like is there someone specific?
Oh yeah. So, this is a sales question.
Exactly.
Yeah, so with sales, one of the things that you want to keep in mind is to engage with a decision maker. So if you are reaching out to a company and you're talking to customer support, they're not your decision makers. The best thing to do in that situation is to say, I am producing an event. I'd love to include your company. Is there a decision maker that I can speak with, or someone who makes decisions about event marketing? And then potentially you're getting in touch with someone that can actually make that decision. And then you're definitely looking for companies that, we talked about that are in alignment with what you're doing and bring a good vibe, right? But then also, one of the questions might be, do they have a budget? If it's a really small company that doesn't have a budget, then I would say to you, don't write them off. Consider how you can fold them into the experience and build a community and build a future for the industry. So is there a possibility that they can contribute in other ways? And that way, when they do have a budget, it's something that we're all working together. Maybe they can put you into another event. Sometimes we'll do event exhibitor swaps. So I'll go exhibit an event, they'll exhibit my event, and that way we're cross-promoting each other with getting value. And then there can be potential synergies in the future where maybe they'll bring in another sponsor, for example, or refer someone. So keep that in your scope of your mind. If you're only doing one event, you're not thinking about the long term. But for me, my objectives are much larger. So I'm thinking about, the macrocosm and how this all fits together. So that's a consideration for me.
I think to your point also, and you touched on this before a little bit, and there too, it ties that question and Chelsea's question together, is that when you're looking at sponsors and who you want to sponsor, who you're reaching out to, and how you price them, I've seen a lot of organizations, and I've been involved in a lot of events that do not just a set price, but also trade towards a raffle or trade towards something else. So I think that have you had good experience with those types of options? And I know there's limitations in cannabis that also create issues around that too.
Yeah, well, I think, I've said it before, but I'll say it again. What is your intention? I think if you come from a place of, we want to create a great event and we want everyone to have value, then it's best to be a little bit fluid with your approach and identify what everybody can bring to the table. So, for, for example, the raffle prize can be that could be actually a value add. So, you might even like have a higher tier where the sponsor, will have access to contribute to the raffle prize. That's a chip, right? That's something that is an incentive. You could have gift bags and then, the sponsors contribute to the gift bag. That can be a sponsorship on its own, or it can be an add-on. And then you can also do a premium VIP gift bag. And that can be because, one, the company doesn't have a multitude. They don't have hundreds of products to put in there. They have 50. So you do a VIP gift bag so that they can, contribute to the bag, and then, they meet their needs. Maybe maybe we're doing a laser heated bong, and it's like a $1,000 device. They're not going to do 2,000 of those for gift bags. But maybe they'll do a few that you can give just to your speakers, and that way they're getting, the speakers get value, they feel honored for being there, and they've got a nice walk-away gift.
That is great advice. So if you are interested in learn and talk, that's really important. So if you're putting on an event and trying to figure out how to best price sponsors and look at different things for giveaways or creating that overall event experience, it's really critical to take a look at what Courtney was just talking about in terms of being able to create those layers and really look at how you can provide value and show appreciation to your guests and do those types of things. Okay, that is all the questions we have right now. Are you ready for the speed round? Okay, there's 3 questions in the speed round. And I don't know if you can tell us the first one, but you might be able to, because depending on if it's your product or not. But what's your favorite cannabis product right now?
What's my favorite cannabis product?
Or do you have one or two that you're like go-to?
Well, let's see. Let's do a few categories. So the Ego Pro, they're doing a rebrand. I don't know what the new branding is. They had some sort of like international trademark issue. But that device is great. It shakes, so it's working, but also at the end of the cartridge, it's empty. There's nothing left. Usually you have a residue in the cartridge.
Yeah.
Nothing left. And you draw on it, and it's so easy to draw the vapor. You don't have to like work on it,
Yeah.
I'm very eco-conscious, so I typically will refill cartridges. And in that instance, oftentimes I need to preheat the device so that you get to the right temperature, and then you can straw, because otherwise the extract is more of a solid viscosity. So that's something I really like. Yes, I will throw in my product because it took me 3 years, and I worked with a formulator, and I developed it with an intention that working on a computer, I get a lot of like tension in my neck. That's something I'm really prone to. And also I love massages. So I came up with a lotion. You can put it on. I worked with a global cannabis medicinal manufacturer, so I'm aware of some of the, medicinal aspects that, these, with a topical, you need to penetrate the dermal layer. You need time for the ingredients to take effect. And so I devised a whole product around this. It's a massage primer. You put it on before your massage. You wait 20 minutes. It's a lotion, not an oil, so that it doesn't ruin your clothes. You can drive to your massage, and then when you get there, you can ask them to use it during the massage. It has CBD in it, full spectrum hemp CBD. Mm-hmm. If you're not comfortable asking your masseuse to use a CBD product, don't. You used it beforehand, and now you can go on your massage. The ingredients have loosened up your muscles, relieved tension. You're going to get a better massage as a result. So for me, I will plug myself only because I saw a need and I filled it, and I love that experience. And I also as I age, my right knee in specific, it can sometimes be a little bit like tender, especially if I'm standing at an event for a long time. So I can put my topical on, and it reduces pain and inflammation. So I like that. Let's see if there's another. There's got to be something else that's like really interesting that I want to share with you. That is a cannabis product. I don't know. I would say. I'd like to say that I think there's a bigger kind of field here within the space for medicinal products. Mm-hmm. And right now there is so much technology surrounding terpene formulas and how they integrate with cannabinoids to treat major illness like cancer, for example.
Yeah.
And as of right now, I don't know if everybody's aware of this, but the intellectual property surrounding cannabis medicine that's the real deal. Yeah. There are companies from around the world currently conducting research looking for these solutions, because the bottom line is, I'm going to say it on camera, cancer is something that can be treated with cannabis. Cell apoptosis, you can kill cancer cells, and you can treat the symptoms. So there are companies right now who want to be first to market, and they want to hold that intellectual property. And so we're not hearing about it. You're not going to hear about it in the news because they're waiting to bring those products to market when it makes sense for them. And they've done the research, they've put in the time, they found the solutions. Of course, they want to benefit from their work. They want to help people, etc. But there's this is a critical time where they have to kind of protect that intellectual property. So in that instance, I would say there's not a specific item, but what brings me to cannabis, what inspires me to be in this industry is healing. So if we can find ways to bring healing and make people's experience more comfortable, and also educate people about the healing components of cannabis, that's going to be my favorite product.
Oh my God. I first got my medical card a long time ago because I almost drowned. My lungs are terrible, and I hate taking a steroid inhaler every day. Like, I can't stand it. So I know they've been doing a lot of research in Israel, so I've been trying to it's hard to monitor research from across the world, but
exactly.
Right,
that's what I'm saying. And even if you could, you don't necessarily have access to it because they're holding it. Nanotechnology is an interesting component because being able to homogenize oil with water and then use a nebulizer,
right.
that's something you might want to look at. And just offline, I received a press release today about a company that has made some innovations in nanotechnology. It might be helpful to you. I don't know. So remind me to send it to you.
It's definitely, I'll take it, because that's why I don't like smoking, because I am so protective of my lungs because I can't get new ones. It's harder. It
should be. It's worth noting that the research I've done shows that cannabis is anti-carcinogenic. So even though you do have, and that's something you want to be aware of, there are tars and other things, materials, but it is anti-carcinogenic. So the chances of getting lung cancer are pretty slim. But yes, there are other means of application. So if you have sensitive lungs, why would you consume plant matter if you could just take an oil, which is great for your brain?
Exactly. And there's lots of different options for it that I use, but it's just, I'm very careful about smoke in general. Anyway, enough about me. So are you indica, sativa, or hybrid?
All of the above.
All of the above.
I like it all.
Always. Let me change the screen here to get your contact information here at the bottom. Okay. I've got it below, but tell people where they can find you if they want to connect, or if they want to learn more,
Sure.
if they want to learn about your products, if they want to learn about your events, because you've got some amazing events going on. September 18th, I heard, was the first date. Now tell us how to find you.
Okay. So I've got a few different channels. For my e-commerce space, I have whitebuffalospirit.org, because I make a donation to nonprofits through a portion of my revenue.
Awesome.
And then White Buffalo Cannabis is the cannabis specific channel. This is also the channel where I promote the events that I'm creating or producing or partnering on. And that's a really easy domain. So it's whitebuffalocannabis.com/events. That's easy. Most of the promotions I do are going to go through Instagram, which is white, WHITE _BUFLO, because there's a lot of white buffaloes out there, and because I want to make it really succinct for character count.
Right.
Then White Buffalo Spirit, which is easy to spell out, one word, no breaks. It's my other e-commerce Instagram channel. And then I have Twitter, I have Mass Roots, I have LinkedIn. In fact, you can just search my name online. I'm CourtneyAura.com, which is where I do my consulting services out of. So I'm pretty easy to find if you even just can remember my name, or put maybe I think Google even knows me as Courtney Cannabis.
That's good. Good job. Good job getting that with Google. So below I have your Instagram, your Facebook, and your White Buffalo Cannabis link. And I think I know I saw that your White Buffalo Spirit site links off of that one. So if you guys go to one of the links below or her website below, you'll be able to look at the whitebuffalospirit.org site as well.
And they all have contact forms that I'm responsive to. So I'd love to connect. Please reach out.
Perfect. And I am very excited that you've been here today. There's been so much great information on event marketing and how to create and produce those events to make people want to come back and actually have fun and help you reach your goals as an event, as a business owner or a business marketing person who's trying to put on these events. So thank you so much for joining us, Courtney. It's been great having you. Sorry I screwed up your name a couple times. That is terrible of me. I feel bad.
Kendra, it has been my honor. Thank you so much for thinking of me and incorporating me into your wonderful show. And I will not mess up your name.
Thanks.
You can do whatever you like. I will still respond because it's you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. And we are out. Enjoy the rest of your week. All right.
Bye.
Bye. And broadcast.